Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Followers of SingularityNET, lovers of equality, people with a passion for a fairer, more inclusive future. Anyone who is watching this video, this is the third in our series of Women in AI in Crypto, or Women in AI, that we are running to celebrate the amazing talents that we have the opportunity to work with at SingularityNET and know in our network, and to celebrate the progress that women have made in technology over the past however long, since Ada Lovelace, I guess, and to also mark International Women's Day month and take stock of all the work that we have left to do. And today we're focusing on women in AI in ethics, and the ethics of AI and the ethics of AGI, and how we can collectively work with artificial intelligence to end discrimination and ensure a brighter, more beautiful, more fair and inclusive future for humanity. So I brought together these three amazing women from my network. Debbie, who is our most advanced, most senior female AI scientist at SingularityNET, is going to lead and moderate the debate and the discussion. Debbie's a huge inspiration with a unstoppable momentum and passion for equality, for dramatic social change, and for eradicating discrimination, and an inspiration to us all at SingularityNET. It's such a pleasure, such a joy, and always such an inspiring delight to see Michelle Lee, soon to be Dr. Michelle Lee from the University of Cambridge, an advanced researcher in ethics of artificial intelligence, a multi-published author in automated intelligence, including having been published in the European Data Protection Handbook last year on the ethics of automated decision-making. Michelle is part of a group of friends I have in London who really, really care about ensuring that artificial intelligence as a technology is used to reduce inequalities, not to further increase them, and to continuously strive towards greater, stronger, more beneficial impact on women worldwide of these powerful technologies. So thank you so much for joining us today, Michelle. We have a woman who just fills me with gratitude and inspiration, Betelhem Dessie from our iCog labs in Ethiopia. Betty puts contribution first, which for an inspiring, motivational, extremely highly accomplished young female technologist in Africa, it's a true inspiration to us. Betty leads what we call the Betty bus, but of course it's a digi-truck as its proper branding, taking a truck around Africa, training children in artificial intelligence, computing and robotics, and really shows us how important it is to bring education to girls, and runs a number of girls programs as well as programs for all gender children across Africa. So it's my great joy and pleasure to have the three of you and me here today for this recorded panel debate, which we will be publishing on our YouTube channel and across social media. So let me hand over to our brilliant Dr. Debbie Duong, who is going to lead and moderate the discussion.
Thank you, Janet. And I am so lucky to have you as my boss at SingularityNET. You've done a lot to work on AI standards for the company, and you have a great history of AI ethics in your research. So I look forward to hearing from you as well. Today, I would like to ask each panelist some questions about their specific work to end discrimination. And when that's done, I'd like to ask all of you the same question and have a discussion about what are some of the best ways to use AI to end systemic discrimination. Now, don't feel shy about getting technical, because as a woman of AI, we need to speak up about our knowledge in AI, if only for the sake of other women who want to join AI and see that we are actually using AI. So let's start with Betty. Betty, I was impressed to see the practical changes you're making in the lives of girls. Please tell us some examples of how learning to code through your projects has improved the life of girls and has helped them to escape the cycle of discrimination. What has worked and what has been hard to change?
Thank you so much for the question, Dr. Debbie, but thank you so much for inviting me to speak on this panel. I'm really honored. Just to say a bit about iCog Labs, because we're also celebrating our 10-year, as you know, Janet, which we're very excited about. So when I first actually joined iCog Labs maybe 6 years ago as an intern, we had a really strong internship program in which we invited a lot of young people, to work on AI projects, which wasn't that common here in Ethiopia. And having that kind of company be present in Ethiopia and having a lot of, interns and, people being interested in the development of AI was really important. And one of the reasons why I'm also running the iCog Anyone Can Code project then and now a company is because we needed to have a lot of talent in the AI ecosystem, especially that comes from the continent. So also the internship was also a big part of that. I remember when Ben first came to, Addis to give a presentation about, the AGI and singularity. And that was interesting for a lot of people. But in terms of contributing to the development of those things were far from reality for all of us. So especially in the work we do at iCog Anyone Can Code, it's very important to reach out to as many people as possible. One is to, have people be interested in AI, even if in the first place, and look at what's happening in the world. I mean, it's become popular right now with everything that's happening, but 10 years ago was not that popular, and a lot of people just thought it was, out of, it's out of fiction books. So it was really important to us to have talent that contributed to this development, because we see a lot of biases in that. But we had, female engineers and programmers join iCog Labs, but in terms of scaling, we saw that there was a lot of work to be done in terms of, awareness creation and reaching out to more girls. So that's when I was actually part of a Girls Can Code program that taught a lot of girls, especially from public schools, in coding and programming. And actually, when we're doing our documentary, actually one of the students I taught at Girls Can Code is now a junior programmer at iCog Labs. So that's basically kind of the work and the impact you see, because we are trying to put in people's brain, okay, this is an important field that we need to be a part of, because there needs diversity. This sector needs diversity, but in order to achieve that, we also need to uplift a lot of women and girls in the sector. So we're already seeing kind of the fruits of our labor, but it's a long-term program. And that's why the DigiTrack is very important, because it reaches places where you wouldn't normally reach with this type of education. So one is, of course, the talent in AI that needs, that needs to be developed, especially across the continent, but also in terms of the data that we're generating. A lot of people, the data is a very important part of AI, right? As a society, we don't generate a lot of that. So how do we make sure that at least it's well represented? And that's through the talent. And that's why it's important to start at a very early age so that we promote the importance of our participation. So we have girls focused programs. We make sure that in our also initiatives such as the DigiTrack, we have female participation. And we encourage a lot of participants to come in and join us and to inspire them and to kickstart. Of course, it's a long-term plan, but it's we believe that it's an important work to do. Yeah.
So inspiring, such an important work to do. Thank you so much for your work in that. Okay, Janet, I'm lucky to have you as my boss at SingularityNET, and I enjoy your endless support, as do other women here. I've read some of your research in AI ethics, and I was impressed by your knowledge of AI algorithms. Some of the algorithms that you've recommended a few years ago include type 2 fuzzy systems, because they are more complex than rule-based systems or linear or decision trees, and therefore more accurate, but they're also designed to explain with human-like language. And I'd like to have kind of an update. Right now, we've got these generative deep neural networks that have become very popular and really almost magical in some of their abilities. So, however, these are trained on biased persons on the internet. And I would like to know, given that the field has recently changed so much, do you still recommend fuzzy sets? And what do you think is the best way to take advantage of the amazingness of generative AI and AI in general?
Well, thank you. I had the honor of doing my master's degree at University of Essex, working for Professor Hani Hagras, my master's in AI. And Hani is a world leader in type 2 fuzzy logic. So I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to work with this visionary leader who also is a leader in applied AI in industry, particularly doing a lot of work with banks, but also working with British Telecom as well in genetic programming, type 2 fuzzy logic, and deep neural network solutions for workforce management. So we had, for my master's thesis, I evaluated 9 different use cases in banking for using 3 different model types: deep neural networks, a plain logistic regression, and type 2 fuzzy logic, and compared the performance of each of the models from a recall accuracy and what's the third thing in a confusion making?
The F-tester.
Recall accuracy and
precision.
Thank you. See, I'm doing too much operations management at the moment. I compare them for recall accuracy and precision, which of course are three differently important measures, particularly in banking. So there are times when you really need precision, and there are times when you need better recall, etc. But then I conducted a review of all of the AI ethics regulation around the world and drew, I think it was 108 unique requirements for AI ethics regulation, an awful lot of similarity. And can any one of the 3 of you guess for me which was the principle which was most present at that time? So this would have been regulation or draft regulation or principles published all around the globe, from China to Australia to UK to OECD to governments, etc. The top 22 articles at the time. Can anybody guess for me what was the number one most frequently occurring principle in that particular data set?
Well, I read the paper, so I shouldn't guess.
So you said the 3 principles: accuracy, precision, and what was
accuracy, precision, and recall were the technical performance measures. But then I was looking at the ethical measures. What were the most important ethical principles for AI around the world?
I don't think it would have been accuracy or precision. In my guess, it would have been recall.
It was very high. Accuracy was very high. We do need our models to be good.
Yeah,
it was high, but it wasn't the highest.
So was it recall?
It was something completely different from those 3 things. Something more in the ethics space.
Okay.
It's an unfair question to just throw in at you. How about you, Michelle? Any guesses?
Well, I remember reading a different paper where they were assessing, I think, like 150 plus different AI ethics principles around the world, and they found that it converged on 4 themes. beneficence, or doing good, and non-maleficence, not doing harm, and justice and autonomy. So I'm guessing it'll be one of those. So I kind of usually group the first two together as impact. So yeah, impact, fairness, or autonomy.
Okay, so at that time, and I did have a bias towards financially oriented AI publications. The number one principle was, in fact, accountability, being that it's important to have someone who's accountable for the algorithm and someone who's accountable to regulators and to customers and to, to everybody who's using these methods, that we're accountable and able to explain why they're doing what they're doing. And this was where type 2 fuzzy logic was head and shoulders above deep neural networks and logistic regression, because of the beautiful way in which it produces human readable rules that explain exactly why the model is making the decision it's making. And the obvious example is credit scoring. If you're going to be impacting a person's life or a company's life by giving them or not giving them credit, or by deciding how to price that credit, the human and the humans involved deserve to know exactly why that model has made that decision, and there needs to be somebody accountable for saying these are the right decisions. Yeah. So fast forward to the age of generative AI, and we find ourselves with large language models largely ruling the planet today. It's like a large scale evolutionary event, which I can see is going to turn into an extinction event for companies who don't adapt in all probability. And these large-scale neural networks, there are a number of different methods for explaining them and bringing their accountability, but they are simply pattern repeaters. They simply combine, match the patterns of the past that they've seen in their data set and then reproduce them. They have no ability to generalize, contextualize. We'll come on to the data point, what data they're trained on. But actually, because of SingularityNET, we have prowess in neurosymbolic AI, which is a much, much less industry deployed technique and much more mathematical and to an extent esoteric, with only a few handful of practitioners with really strong prowess in the field. What we are working on at SingularityNET is infusing deep neural networks with neural symbolic techniques and using generative large language models as controllability explainers for the models. So actually, what if you take a large language model and then get that large language model to explain why that language model is coming up with its results? So we're super excited about this, and it's a major technological and ethical focus for us.
Great. I'm so glad to hear that we're adapting and we're going to be the head of. Well, I shouldn't say this because this is the ethics, but I'm so glad to hear about your work in this field.
Thank you. I'm very lucky to be surrounded by incredible technologists.
Yeah.
With heart and soul and principles, to your point about beneficence and doing no harm. That's at the very core of everything we do. So I'm very blessed.
Absolutely. And Michelle, I'm very impressed with your research in context dependence in credit risk assessment. Do you think bias in credit decision-making is a matter of a lack of accuracy at its base? And is it possible to make deep learning algorithms so accurate that they can find people who are trustworthy but have been denied credit by simpler algorithms? After all, the underlying premise of systemic discrimination is that women and minorities are undervalued. Is it possible, maybe with a more causal machine learning, to uncover this value? What do you think?
Yeah, sure. So I think that is a really important point to make, that sometimes AI and more advanced algorithms can be less biased than humans. And in a lot of applications of AI, it is implemented precisely for that reason. So in credit risk evaluation, as well as in automated underwriting, in hiring and recruiting algorithms, there have been such a long history of human biases that have been shown to discriminate against minority and excluded groups. And also sometimes more advanced models, actually most of the time, more advanced models are better performing. And when we talk about the accuracy fairness trade-off, it's really an oversimplification, because sometimes you can improve on both accuracy and in fairness. And the improvement in accuracy is actually translated into reduction of your portfolio credit risk and greater financial inclusion, access to credit for those who were otherwise not able to have one. And all of that is a huge positive, and it's a huge opportunity of AI. The key risk is that these AI algorithms can learn from much more data than humans can digest, and it can identify patterns in these predictions in really unexpected ways. And these patterns that they detect can sometimes be associated not really so much with our creditworthiness, but with who we are, including our race and our gender. And we're also often using flawed data, and we're basing it on flawed systems. And there's the risk that these algorithms can identify patterns that exist because of past discriminatory or exclusionary practices. And obviously, to train an algorithm, to train AI, you need historical data. But if our historical data has harmful biases, AI will only replicate it and worsen inequalities at an unprecedented scale versus human decision-making. And that's why there's so much focus on biased algorithms right now. And because these biases are due to humans, due to processes, due to embedded in the data set, et cetera, it's really not something that can be removed through a technical solution, but it requires kind of an inspection of and changes to some of our policies and processes.
Yes, that sounds great. Thank you. I'm glad that it sounds more hopeful than I thought. Like it's not just simply that we learn from biased data. It's that we can become more accurate as well. I admit I share some background with you in computational social science, maybe in your past, and I address these issues with multiple intelligent agents. And so I have the first intelligent agent-based simulation in 1991, and it's about discrimination. My approach is to look at the self-reinforcing cycles in society to explain and understand discrimination. And so I wanted to ask myself a question: if I were to write this simulation now, how would I change it?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So way back then in 1991, I was working on bottoms-up types of approaches, like taking a set of rules and seeing how they unfold together, and not really looking at the real world data, but having a little toy model of the real world and seeing similar patterns in the little toy model. And that's what people use a lot of agent-based simulation for. But these are intelligent agents, so the agents sort of co-evolve together. They learn from each other. And my 1991 model was of employer and employee agents. And each agent had its own neural network in its head, but not the supervised learning ones that use real world data today, but the Hopfield kind. And this is kind of a more transparent kind than the supervised learning models that we use today. They use the Hopfield network brains to predict what the traits of employees are that are best for their jobs. So that's what the employer agents would use a neural network to find the best employees. And the employee agents would use their minds to predict what signs they should show to the employers, or what they should do to get a job. Now, each of these agents had 3 signs that they could show. because a human being is the symbolic species. But they could not show directly their talent. But these three signs they could show were of a sign they could not change, representing demographic characteristics that they were born with, a sign that they could change and buy with money that they got from employment, and a sign that they could change freely. Okay. And so each employee's had this hidden talent that was uncorrelated from the sign in the beginning, the signs they showed, but not visible. At the same time, the employees use their neural networks to figure out what to do, what sign to display to get employed. Okay, and it's from all this sign displaying and sign reading, the signs came to have meaning. And from this dynamic arose different institutional patterns on the upper level, like racism, race-based class, and status symbols. And so if I were to change this today, what I would change is I would make it not only develop up from bottoms up rules of microsociology or symbolic interactionism, but also reflect data in reality. And so I would have a hybrid mixture that would absorb data from the real world, in addition to having each agent act according to its utility. So it would be a mixture of reinforcement learning or acting according to utility, and doing this while mimicking real world data. And it would be it would scale a lot more. I would have many more agents than we could have in the past. So I'm glad to see all these different perspectives of how to use AI to end systematic discrimination. And now I'd like to have a panel discussion on what are some of the best ways to do this in the future? What do you see as the best techniques to use and the most promising ones? And we could just chime in and talk about what you think, and what do you think of each other's works and how that could be improved in the future to end systemic discrimination.
Yeah, well, before we go to that, just in terms of the simulation, I'm actually currently finishing up a paper on the use of reinforcement learning and kind of Bayesian statistics to try to understand the long-term implications of using a machine learning model in a real-world scenario. So, like, one of the key issues, for example, is the presence of the known unknowns. If you denied someone a loan, you don't know whether they would have been able to repay the loan. And so training it on that historical loan data will kind of force you to only consider the kinds of people you have previously given a loan to. So it doesn't really look at the counterfactual excluded people. So that's actually a paper that I'm currently working on, and hopefully it'll make an impact in terms of what I'm calling a new technique called fairness under uncertainty, expanding the model to avoid penalizing previously excluded groups for the model's uncertainty. So yeah, that's
great. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, that's like an idea whose time has come, really.
Absolutely. And there was a pretty famous Amazon case, wasn't there, where they were using AI for hiring and asked the AI to match candidates, applicants, to the profile of their most successful employees. And unsurprisingly, their most successful employees turned out to be white males. They were the ones who got the most promotions, the highest pay rises, and were generally most successful in the organization. And even
so
when...
it's how you define the measure, the success, right?
Exactly.
Not the real measure, which is what is a measure of talent, not what people think is your talent.
And so the key there is the target variable is flawed in the first place. And to Michelle's point about previously excluded classes, what if you actually change that mix organizationally within the organization so that more women or women of color have opportunities to rise through the organization? How much more successful is the organization as a whole because of the diversity, by incorporating previously excluded groups, as you say? And I think Debbie, this is segueing nicely into your next topic, which is how do we use AI to eradicate discrimination?
That's right.
And
that's right.
If I may kick off, I think we've just had a couple of really great examples of that. But to my mind, AI, park AGI for a moment, right, which is a whole different ballgame, really. But just from an AI perspective, it's a dawn of a new era. It's an era where by having measures like precision, accuracy, recall, by having outcomes testing, by having clarity on the decisions which an AI is making, we learn the embedded hidden patterns and the hidden biases in our society, which are being represented in that data. And so those biases have never before been uncovered in the same way as they are today, launching us into a new era of AI-powered inclusivity and equality. And I'm massively super glad to be here right now at this point in time on our planet, as you say, time when an idea whose time has come, and to have the opportunity, like, it gives me goosebumps to work with such incredible, talented women technologists, taking forward the ethics and the driving the inclusivity in the space, because the most powerful technologies ever invented must serve the greatest sector of humanity. And it's only by having the greatest sector of humanity involved in those technologies that they will effectively serve the greatest sector of humanity. So I'm massively, massively, massively optimistic. And I take an opposite view to those who say, oh my God, AI is biased. No, society is biased. AI is trained on its data, and AI is going to show us a better way.
Right. The way they have it set up now, AI is just a self-licking ice cream cone, you know. It's just that as it's trained on bias and it's made to reflect that bias. But how can we use other measurements like utility to break that bias? And I believe that's totally possible. In fact, it's almost obvious that human beings have bias, and that an AI is capable of not having the same kinds of biases, and is able to, depending on the measurements you give to it, not reflect and reflect something better, or reflect something more towards what we really want to get at. And if you think about it, you know, society, from the point of view of systemic discrimination, is not using a lot of mental resources. If we only look at one of the demographic groups, which really isn't any more talented than the other demographic groups, and we only glorify them, then there's so much talent that we aren't using, that as AI is able to unlock this talent, you know, there will be, so much better results from our work.
I think, I haven't done research in terms of the area or published papers as you here, but I really do understand the importance of having diverse opinions and having people from multiple backgrounds do similar types of research as you have done, which I think I'm also very optimistic about the capabilities of AI. But it's also the humans that develop these solutions. So it's very important having, more people with more backgrounds and, understanding of the problems. It's very important because usually these type of solutions are implemented on a large scale, including the continent and also countries in Africa. So it's very important to understand the context, localize it, but also have more people working on it. So I think it's very, very important to have, research like the ones you've done yourselves, but also having role models that could encourage a lot of women, but also people of color to come in and join these fields. Because once you're in it, you'll understand, okay, these are problems that are happening. So how do I solve it? So I'm mainly working on the talent side of things. And it's also because initially, also when I joined, in terms of the global or international landscape, I saw that there was a lot of lack in that. So you can see like organizations like Black in AI, which are doing also a similar type of work, but also like getting it to the young people is very important to understand the impact. So yeah, I think, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But I think in terms of what also SingularityNET is doing and supporting, but also the research that both of you are doing, I think we are on a good path.
Yes. The future is bright.
Yeah, and I think because I work in AI risks and AI ethics, and a lot of what I write is about, the risks of AI, I think there's the general misconception that I'm very pessimistic about the use of AI in a lot of these very important frontline use cases, but actually the risk of unfairness of AI and of algorithms could also be an opportunity, because human decision-making can be mired in so many cognitive biases that are so challenging to track because everyone is so different. But by contrast, an algorithm is inherently auditable. It might not be completely transparent in terms of transparent or explainable in a way that a lot of the more simpler models are, but there are a lot of new techniques coming up in explainability of different models that will really help us understand how an algorithm is working. And when the ethical and practical objectives are clearly defined and clearly, communicated to the developers, then it's possible to test whether this is achieving the kinds of outcomes that we want, especially when there are any trade-offs between the objectives that we have, any competing objectives that we have. And so it's really an opportunity for different leaders to meaningfully define what it means to implement a fair system in whatever use case that they're working in.
Absolutely, yes. And this is a way for AGI to come into the picture, because AGI can have multiple objectives at the same time, and or at least will be able to have, and it's good that we're starting off with multiple fair and good objectives. Janet, did you have something to say?
Well, I mean, it's such a great point. Having worked in banking, risk and conduct for most of my career, where I worked on incentive structures and worked in conduct risk and ethics and regulation as for a good portion of that time, as well as technology and robotics. I would, if I had the choice between a human to make a fair decision or an algorithm to make a fair decision, with some humans, I would choose the humans, particularly the beautiful like-minded humans that we are here, or the beautiful like-minded humans that we work with at SingularityNET. But let's say it's 1,000 people making the decisions from different backgrounds who I don't have that personal connection with or that personal trust in. I would choose the algorithm, because the algorithm, as Michelle says, the algorithm has no hidden agenda, and we see this in our, and it has no bias towards personal gain. and depending on how it's being programmed, of course. And we see this very clearly in all forms of decision making across the planet, that really the guard is changing. Women like us are coming into technology. Transparency is being shown on things like pay inequality. I mean, pay inequality just drives me mad. My first ever, I first got involved in a women's network at Royal Bank of Scotland in, I think it was 2016. So I'm approaching 2 decades. And after about a decade, I sort of gave up because I thought, if I go to one more event where someone tells me all I need is to be mentored or sponsored by a man, that everything will work out well in my career, I'm going to just sort of strangle them. So I gave up on the women's network because I got so disillusioned. And actually, here we are 20 years on, and there still isn't one single country in the world where women have achieved economic parity with men. And when I was working at a major bank in the UK back in whenever it was 2018, where the gender pay gap results were reported in the UK, the results were just so incredibly skewed against females. And yes, women do like to work part-time sometimes. They do like to have babies. They sometimes go out of their career and come back into their career. They look after elderly parents, etc., and do the majority of the unpaid work in the house, etc. There are so many different factors skewed against women, but technology and artificial intelligence and making the education, and that's why I admire you so much, Betty, for the work you're doing in education, and Michelle for being a woman leader in this field. The work we do in education to support young women in moving into technology. Technology created wealth has always driven the wealth of the planet, and even more so now as we enter the age of artificial general intelligence, and the AI revolution is properly upon us, having been promised many times. It's now actually arisen. I've got my mojo back for the causes. I then worked in LGBT networks. I supported some of my team to found a Black and ethnic minorities network. I worked on the board of a transgender charity. I've always had some kind of drive in me for equality, and it's just that drive that's brought me to this point now, where with technology and amazing women like you, we're actually on the brink of really doing something transformative and impactful.
Amazing, yes.
I feel so strongly about it. I feel so strongly about equality. I feel so strongly about education, and recognizing that if we are, which we are fortunate enough to have that education, it must be used in service of the greater good.
Absolutely. And I'm so proud that Betty is reaching her hands out to young girls, starting them in AI early, so that we can, look at AI as something that is possible for us to do. I remember when I was young, I did not have a lot of mentors, and it just limits what you think as the possibilities out there, especially when you're a girl, a young girl, you look to other people who are like you, and we have to use AI to break that, to just reach out, and even though it's hard, tell them, yes, you're going to be valued in this field. This is a field that is welcoming to you. It's not going to be full of people who don't understand you or think you're not as good as you really are. So I'm so proud of everybody here for working towards that, because that's important to people for their mental health, that they realize their full potential. Thank you so much for everybody here for contributing to that. Any last thoughts? Okay, well, it was so
Well, I have. I was just waiting to see if Michelle had any closing comments. Or Betty.
Are you on mute? Okay.
I want to say thank you to you, Debbie, I know what a pioneer you are in artificial intelligence. You're probably one of a very, very few handful of women globally who was pioneering artificial intelligence in 1991. And it's thanks to women like you that women like these amazing ladies in front of us have that opportunity opening up from a role model and inspiration perspective. So thank you very, very much for everything you do and your tireless passion for equality and ending discrimination. It's a golden, glorious time to work together to end discrimination. And put food on the table. Put food on the table for everybody.
That's right. Very important.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies.
you.
It's been super beautiful being with you here today.